If you're like me, someone who constantly has one eye on their health, scanning for any little thing that might go wrong, you know that even the tiniest nutrient can suddenly feel like the most important thing in the world once you learn what it actually does. For me, iodine was one of those hidden in plain sight essentials. I'd heard of it in passing, usually in the context of salt, but never really thought about how important it is until I started digging into its connection with thyroid health. And now, well, let's just say it's on my permanent radar. Here's the thing, your thyroid is basically the control tower for your metabolism. It produces two main hormones, thyroxine and triiodothyronine, that regulate your energy levels, your body temperature, your heart rate, and even how your brain functions. Without enough iodine, your thyroid can't make those hormones. It's like trying to bake bread without flour. No iodine, no proper thyroid function. And without proper thyroid function, a whole cascade of health problems can follow. One of the scariest things about iodine deficiency is how sneaky it can be. In mild cases, you might not even notice symptoms at first. Maybe you feel a little more tired than usual. Maybe your skin gets drier. Maybe you're gaining a bit of weight even though your diet hasn't changed. But in more severe cases, the thyroid can swell up in an attempt to capture as much iodine as possible from your bloodstream. This swelling is called a goiter, and while it's less common in countries where iodine is added to table salt, it's still a risk in parts of the world, and even in certain health-conscious circles where people avoid iodized salt in favor of natural salts like sea salt or Himalayan pink salt, which often contain very little iodine. Here's why iodine is so critical. Every cell in your body depends on thyroid hormones to regulate its metabolism. If your thyroid slows down, everything slows down. Your digestion, your brain function, your mood, your ability to burn calories. That's why hypothyroidism, which can be caused by iodine deficiency, comes with such a long list of symptoms. Fatigue, weight gain, hair loss, feeling cold all the time, depression, constipation, dry skin, brittle nails, swelling in the face and extremities, and even memory problems. For someone with health anxiety, it's basically a list of things you do not want to experience, and a great reason to make sure you're getting enough iodine. But it's not just about preventing low thyroid function. Adequate iodine also plays a role in preventing certain types of thyroid nodules and even thyroid cancer. Some research suggests that populations with adequate iodine intake have lower rates of these issues compared to iodine-deficient populations. And it's not just your thyroid that benefits. During pregnancy, iodine is absolutely critical for brain development in the fetus. Even mild iodine deficiency in expectant mothers has been linked to lower IQ and cognitive problems in children later on. That's how fundamental this little nutrient is. It shapes the development of the brain itself. Of course, the anxious brain, my anxious brain, always wants to ask, well, what happens if I get too much? And that's a fair question. Like many nutrients, iodine follows a U-shaped curve where both too little and too much can be harmful. Excessive iodine can actually trigger thyroid dysfunction as well, including hyperthyroidism, where your thyroid becomes overactive, or thyroiditis, inflammation of the thyroid. In rare cases, it can even worsen autoimmune thyroid diseases like Hashimoto's or Graves' disease. So yes, there's a sweet spot, and the goal is to hit it consistently. So how much is enough? The recommended dietary allowance, RDA, for iodine is 150 micrograms per day for most adults. Pregnant women need about 220 micrograms, and breastfeeding women about 290 micrograms, because their iodine needs are higher to support the baby's brain development. The tolerable upper limit for adults is set at 1,100 micrograms per day, meaning you generally don't want to exceed that amount from diet and supplements combined unless specifically directed by your doctor for a medical reason. The good news is 150 micrograms isn't a huge amount, and you can get it from a variety of foods. The most famous source is iodized salt. Just a quarter teaspoon of iodized table salt provides about 70 micrograms of iodine. If you use iodized salt in cooking and at the table, you can easily meet your needs. But here's the catch. A lot of people, especially those trying to eat clean or lower their sodium, have switched to unrefined sea salts or Himalayan salts, which often have far less iodine, sometimes almost none. If that's you, you'll need to be more intentional about getting iodine from other foods. Seafood is another excellent source, especially seaweed. Kelp, nori, wakame, and kombu can be extremely rich in iodine, so much so that you have to be careful not to overdo it. A single gram of certain kelps can contain thousands of micrograms of iodine, far above the daily limit. Fish and shellfish like cod, shrimp, and tuna are more moderate sources, usually providing 30 to 100 micrograms per serving. Dairy products are another key source, largely because iodine is used in animal feed and in sanitizing equipment in dairy processing, so milk, yogurt, and cheese often have good amounts. Eggs also contain iodine, with the majority in the yolk. If you're plant-based or vegan, iodine can be trickier to get consistently without supplements. Some plant foods, like potatoes and certain grains, contain iodine, but the amounts vary widely depending on the iodine content of the soil they were grown in. This variability is one reason why iodine deficiency can still happen even in developed countries. Our food supply isn't uniformly rich in it unless we intentionally fortify. For me, as someone who likes to have a checklist for my health, I've made iodine part of my mental nutrient essentials list. I've looked at my diet, I've checked the type of salt I use, and I've even researched iodine supplements. If you go the supplement route, potassium iodide is the most common form. But here's where I have to stress something. If you already have a thyroid condition, talk to your doctor before taking iodine supplements. In some cases, sudden increases in iodine intake can actually make things worse if your thyroid is already struggling, or if you have certain autoimmune conditions. Another interesting thing I learned is that some foods called goitrogens can interfere with iodine uptake in the thyroid. These include cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, and Brussels sprouts. Now, before you panic and start swearing off vegetables, it's important to know that for most people, especially if you're getting enough iodine, goitrogens are not a big concern. Cooking these vegetables also reduces their goitrogenic activity, so unless you're eating pounds of raw kale every day, you probably don't need to worry. Still, it's something I keep in mind, especially since my goal is to support my thyroid in every way possible. When you think about it, iodine is one of those nutrients where a little awareness goes a long way. The difference between deficiency and sufficiency can be as simple as choosing iodized salt over non-iodized, or having seafood a couple of times a week. Yet the consequences of deficiency can be life-changing, and not in a good way. For someone with health anxiety, that's a compelling reason to make iodine part of your health strategy. It's also worth noting that thyroid health isn't just about iodine. Selenium, zinc, and iron also play important roles in thyroid hormone production and metabolism. But iodine is the cornerstone. Without it, the whole system falters. That's why the World Health Organization has made eliminating iodine deficiency a global health priority, and why countries that introduced iodized salt saw dramatic improvements in public health, from reducing goiters to improving cognitive outcomes in children. For me personally, learning about iodine has been another reminder that health is built on a foundation of small, consistent choices. It's not always about the latest superfood or supplement trend. Sometimes it's about making sure you have enough of the basics, the nutrients your body has relied on for thousands of years, and keeping them at the right levels. And iodine, humble as it is, happens to be one of those basics. So now in my daily life, I think of iodine the way I think of brushing my teeth. It's not flashy, it doesn't feel like a big event, but it's a habit that quietly protects me from a whole lot of trouble down the line. Whether that's a sprinkle of iodized salt, a serving of fish, or a sushi roll with some nori, I know I'm giving my thyroid and my entire metabolism the raw material it needs to keep me running smoothly. If you've never thought about your iodine intake before, this might be a good time to take stock. Look at your salt, check your diet, see if you're in that healthy range. For most of us, it's not hard to get enough, but you do have to be intentional. And if you're like me, the peace of mind that comes from knowing you're covered is worth every bit of that effort. Because the truth is, when you take care of your thyroid, you're taking care of your entire body, your brain, your energy, your mood, even your future self. And in the never-ending quest to stay healthy, that's one investment I'm more than happy to make.